Hello, it's the Red Pill News Dispensary. I know a lot of you guys don't get fall. Actually, not exactly the best colors over here, but it's way better in other parts of the state. Um, it's these types of trees, and the reason I'm talking like that is because this story has been messing with me all night. Um, I was able to sleep. I didn't think I was gonna be able to sleep. I am like so angry and like just like heartbroken at the same time. And I don't know if how many of you heard of this, but this is one of those stories where you guys know I love breaking stories. I love being first. I could have went live last night with it, but I just didn't understand it. From the information I was getting, too many things weren't adding up. Now, I would say 80% of those things that weren't adding up now add up, and it makes sense now. Um, it was just such a dynamic situation, like continuously changing and evolving. Yet there's still like 20% that I still don't fully understand. I have some questions. But this is what I'm talking about. If you guys haven't heard, um, there were so there were 18 Americans who were ambushed by the cartel, or according to Trump, cartels. And that's one of the things that I actually questioned. Just so you know, that's why I said cartel. But it might have been cartels. It might have been two cartels shooting it out. There's some evidence that makes me think that, and then there's some other common sense that makes me not think that. But basically, there were 18 of them. Amongst the 18 were 3 adults and 15 children. And out of the 18, there were 9 killed. All 3 adults were killed, along with 6 children. 8 survived. Eight, I'm sorry, like wounded and survived. And one who was not wounded. And it sounds like he was the hero, a child, because the rest were children, all children. And this was a group of basically two families, but it was actually also extended family of one of the families. So there were at least 3 families involved. Um, but like one of the families were extended families of one of the two families. There's two main last names you're going to hear. So I'll just read them for you. I wrote down their names. I have them memorized by now, but just because of my nerves, I don't want to forget or misquote. So Donna Langford, she was heading from Sonora to, I guess the pronunciation is Chihuahua. At least that's the way it's like spelled. It literally says Chihuahua. So I'm just gonna say Chihuahua. And they were heading there to see family, and they were thinking about moving there, but they were heading there to see family that they had in Chihuahua, and they were coming from Sonoma. So let's see. And then along with Donna Langford, who was 43 by the way, was Christina Marie Langford Johnson, who was 29. And then Donna Langford, these are all people who were killed. Donna Langford's son, Trevor Langford, who was 11. And then Rogan Langford, who was 2.5. By the way, altogether there were I don't know if there were 3 or 4 cars, but I know that 3 cars were shot and one was set on fire. All right, and then the other main family, it was Renita Miller, 30, and her children, Howard Miller, 12, Crystal Miller, 10, and Tiana and Titus Miller, 8-month-old twins. Amongst the surviving were a 9-month-old, not 9 years, 9-month-old who was shot in the chest and survived so far. A 4-year-old shot in the back. And by the way, all 8 survivors were children. But they were, from what I understand, they were all wounded. And then there was one more child who, by the way, his name is, because I wanted to definitely make note of him and what he did. Devin Langford. So Devin Langford was not injured. The other 8 survivors, he covered them with brush and branches and all this stuff so that they couldn't be seen, and he ran off. Now the next oldest was and he ran off to get help, and he ended up running 14 miles to where he got to a town because, to remind you, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm not doing a good job doing the reporting, but I just wanted to get the names out there. This is a mountainous area, and this was like in the mountains in between Sonoma and Chihuahua, and it was in the mountains, and that's where they were ambushed. Now, Trump says it was 2 cartels shooting at each other, but the only thing that makes me believe that is how could, the 13-year-old, the 13 or 14, he was either 13 or 14, I'm sorry, Devin Langford. And by the way, it looks like the whole Miller family didn't make it. The one with the 8-month-old twins and the 30-year-old mother and the 10, 12-year-old Crystal and Howard, respectively, 10 and 12. And so it looks like no one from the Miller family made it, because when they said he covered them up with brush and branches and he hid them, he said they were his siblings, and his last name was Langford. And like I said, there was this extended family of one of the families. Well, the extended family were also Langford, but some of them might have been Langford Johnson. Now, all of these people are Mormons, and there is a Mormon community down there. They are U.S. citizens, but they have a dual citizenship. Now, Renita Miller and her family were heading to Arizona, but they all knew each other, and they were in a motorcade together. Probably because they knew it was a little bit dangerous. I mean, even people who live in that area, the Mexicans, who experience horrific stuff every day, cannot believe how horrific this is. There wasn't one man there. We're talking 3 women, and I'm just making sure I get them. And I said 16 before, I think, and 15 children, 6 of which died, and that number might go up. And only 1 wasn't wounded, from what I understand. He's the one who ran 14 miles and got help. And so he got help, but while he was out getting help, he was out so long that Mackenzie Langford, all of 9 years old, who was also grazed by a bullet, she was grazed by a bullet, so she's wounded. She ventured out, because she must have been the next oldest. That's telling you how young the surviving ones who were injured are. I mean, I already told you a couple of them, a 9-month-old and a 4-year-old. The rest of them are probably in between 4 and 9. And basically, she ventured out. And that almost ended up being a bad idea, because Devin did get help to come to them. But thank God she was found by a search party. Now, even people in Mexico are just like, this is the northeast corner of Mexico. right on our border, by the way. We're talking like 30 to 50 miles from our border, this happened to American family. Without men there, three women and 15 children. And not just children, we're talking about twins, little beautiful names too. I mean, not that that matters, but like it just adds to. I don't know. Whenever I read that, um, their names, Tiana and Titus, it's so cute. And a 9 month old shot in the chest that survived. 4 year old shot in the back. Did I say chest about the 4 year old? No, the 4 year old shot in the back. And then she was brave. I believe, yeah, Mackenzie Langford, a 9 year old who's shot, grazed by a bullet. So she's still shot though, and she's wounded, and she ventures out on her own after being ambushed by some of the, scariest people that exist on Earth. Now, at first, I was thinking, no, this was not two cartels shooting it out. This doesn't make sense. They burned one of the cars to try to burn bodies or evidence or something like that. I'm assuming, this is just my assumption based on trying to make common sense of it. It was probably the Miller car, because I think all of the Millers perished. It doesn't say that, but that's the way it looks, because it said it was his siblings that he was, and his name was Langford. And so he ran 14 miles. He was the only one not injured, and at least he was like 13, 14, old enough where he could, he made it. He made it, and he got them help. But then Mackenzie was gone and wounded because she ventured out, because he hadn't come back yet. But little did she know he had to go that far. And then they found her. Now, what ended up making me think, you know what, maybe the president's actually right, and it actually is two cartels, is how would a 14-year-old be able to take a 9-month-old, 4-year-old, 9-year-old, and a bunch of other children, get them away from the scene and cover them up with brush without being seen? So it does kind of sound like maybe it was a shootout and they realized they messed up. But then again, why was a 4-year-old shot in the back? Why was a car burned? There's a lot that doesn't add up. And it's like, how did they even get away? How did anyone get away? How did anyone survive at all when they're just children left? All the adults are dead. So how could these children survive? I mean, he covered them up with stuff. But then how did he run away without being seen? In a mountainous region, these people, these cartels, they know the area. They know to get the high ground, and they can see everything. So I don't really understand. You'd think they would want no witnesses. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I have any idea how they survived. Trump tweeted that there was two shooting it out, but he might be kind of saying that like, figuratively, like they've been shooting it out and the violence there. And he actually said Mexico has been really cracking down on the cartels, but the cartels are more powerful than the military. I mean, we found that out when they tried to arrest remember El Chapo's kid. They ended up being outmanned, outgunned, and had to let him go. And they were federales. They weren't just police or army. They were federal. They were like the best Mexico has. They're like Marines. So Trump said, you know what? They are an army, and I don't think the Mexican army, no offense, they're doing their best, but it looks like he was basically saying in a tweet, if you go look at his tweet. Hello? Yes, those of you who are watching live, are not watching live, you're probably going to just see me teleport from outside to inside. I can take my sunglasses off, but honestly, I'd rather not. I'm a little bit... This story really kind of hit home, and just the ages, it's just disgusting. And I was thinking that had something to do with my reception, but no, my reception was fine. So I think it's what I was about to say, and I'm still gonna say it. So hopefully it doesn't happen or it doesn't buffer. Tell me if it buffers, by the way. What I think is he's gonna offer the assistance of the U.S. military to finally take out these cartels. And I mean, he's not even like hiding it. Usually he doesn't telegraph his moves, but he said straight up, if it takes an army to beat an army, then we might have to get involved and take these cartels out. Taking out these families like this. Yes, and they lived in Mexico, and there was a large settlement of Mormons there, from what I understand. From a lot of them, they originally come from Utah. These families, um, and they're Americans first. It's just they are probably trying to spread the word of their religion, and on this side and this in this hemisphere of the world, that is 100% okay, and you are allowed to have your religious freedoms. Um, but the Miller family, Renita Miller and her kids, were heading to Arizona to shop. So they were heading back into America. It sounds like the Langford family was much more like permanent down there, because where little Devin ran to was a family member's house. Um, I wonder if it's the same family member that they were heading to. They were heading to the house in the first place. So I wanted to. I now I just thought of it. If anyone wants to Google real quick, how far would it be from like the from? And by the way, this was on a highway in Mexico, and Sonoma, heading into Chihuahua. And I know that sounds ridiculous. I'm pronouncing it like that, but I mean, you guys look at the. It's Chihuahua. Chihuahua. I don't know. If not, it's like Chihuahua. I don't know, but I'm just saying Chihuahua. I don't care. So, I mean, I care, but I just don't care about the pronunciation right now. I just can't believe that this happened like this. This is so disgusting. These are God fearing good people. Now here's where I have questions. Was it really two cartels shooting it out? At first I was thinking, no, it can't be, because if that doesn't really make sense. Like, how would so many of them get killed and burned? And like, what did they call a ceasefire and say, hey guys, we messed up? Some America, a bunch of women and children got caught in our crossfire. Let's burn one of the cars and shoot up the rest. Oh, they are already shot it up. But what I mean? It just didn't make sense to me. It just didn't hit my ear right. But then when you hear about Devin's story of saving his siblings, and hiding them under brush and branches and all that stuff so they couldn't be seen. And mind you, he's hiding 8 people. From what we know, of the 8 were a 9-year-old, who I believe was the second oldest, or at least the least wounded, like the not as wounded as the others. Um, because, for her to venture out, either she's the oldest, or the least wounded, or both. And then you have a 4-month old, and I mean, I'm sorry, a 4-year-old shot in the back, and a 9-month old shot in the chest. And those are the survivors. We already talked about unfortunately, the ones who are not with us anymore because of these mindless cartels. And it's one of those things where you can't just like reason on. There's no like diplomacy because what they do is what the cartels do is I studied the cartels for a while for a different show that I ended up never doing. But what I was really looking into is how they would fragment the mind, which is something I've always been fascinated in because of the Satanism stuff. What they'll do to children is they fragment their mind. They'll show them something so horrific, like let's say, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's reality. Like let's say that it's one of those satanic days where it, blood is required, and they sacrifice like a bunny, and they just kill a bunny in front of a child. Especially, let's say, the worse, the more frightened, the better, because what they're trying to do is cause trauma that fragments the mind. And elites are doing this to their own kids. That's what people don't. That's what some people don't understand. Um, because in order to do what it takes to, you know, be a Luciferian and you know, uh, achieve your agenda, you have to do some horrific stuff. So from a young age, they fragment the mind of their children, and then they give them very good educations and all this, and they're extremely intelligent. And they're like, it's like you wouldn't even know that they have this part of their brain that is capable of the most horrific things you wouldn't even believe, because that's the way the brain works. I mean, just from some of my traumas, a hypnotist brought them back. The memories totally went away, and a hypnotist brought back all these horrific memories, and I ended up being the worst thing seeing him. I would have rather not remembered some of that stuff, but instead it was fresh in my head. um, you know Cleaning a trachea, but this isn't, I don't want to make any of this about me. And I was gonna announce something about donations, but I'll wait for that for another video because I'm just doing this promotional thing. But you can read it in the description. But when I'm not talking about donate, nothing like that on this video. That's just obviously, you know, foul. Um, but what they do is they fragment the mind. The elites do it, and the cartel. When you look at America, and you look at the drug problem America has, the number one beneficiary from that drug problem is the cartel. So, along with the MS-13, as far as at least where I'm from, the El Salvadorians, MS-13s, El Salvadorians, by the way, they directly benefit, but eventually the money would go to like El Chapo, and then it was his son. And now I don't know if his son is, it's too hard for him to do anything in his position after what just happened last week. So someone else has stepped up. But what they're doing is exactly what these elites do. And without this, it took a long way of getting here. But the way the elites fragment the mind in Luciferian practices, it's the same thing that these Mexican cartels do to these young boys. And it's almost like, it's a way of life in some of these villages and towns in Mexico. There's work, but some of the villages, and there might be some trouble. There might be orphans. They might not have a father in their life, and the mother has too many children, and the father died by the cartel, and then they'll end up recruiting his young kids. It's like crazy. Um, it reminds me of that movie, City of God, I believe, about Rio, I think, in Brazil. It's unbelievable. It's like child killers, and they have these children do this stuff. Um, even military do this stuff. Like the Israeli military has you um, raise a I believe it's a cat, a kitten. They have you raise it, nurse it to health and everything, take care of it, and then at the end of your training, you kill it. I know this is bad stuff. I should have gave a warning at the beginning. I was actually gonna make this age restriction, but once I saw that with that means you have to be signed in, you have to verify your age. I didn't want to do that to the viewers, but I should have. I meant to say at the beginning, if there's kids or, but I think I kind of you guys got that vibe right away. Um, and then the Israeli special forces, they raise. Oh yeah, I already said there is a kitten and do that. The SS with the Nazis, they would have a German Shepherd, and these dogs are so loyal. To have a dog that would die for you, and then you have to strangle that dog with your hands. A beast, an animal that would die for you. The SS Nazis would have them do that. One, you know, um, you almost have to kind of prove how ruthless you're willing to be. If you're willing to kill a dog that you've lived with, taken care of, and this dog will protect you and die for you, and you're gonna kill it with your bare hands. The Israeli military, they actually kind of got that whole idea from the SS. Um, Now, as far as I know, the American military doesn't have anything like that. They have certain, traditions, but nothing like that crazy crap. It's kind of weird how the Israeli military picked that up from the Nazis, um, but it kind of makes sense when the Nazis almost wiped out the Jews. You're gonna need to adopt some of their tactics, especially when it comes to special forces, if you're gonna make sure it never happens again. But anyways, that's I'm just trying to talk about what they do to these young children in these Mexican villages. They fragment their mind. They have them do stuff like that. They have them kill very young. They see which ones can do it, which ones can't. Um, the ones that can, just because they can do it doesn't mean that they're like a bad kid at all. There's no such thing as a bad kid. There's only bad parents and bad governments and societies. Children aren't bad inherently. They can become bad when they're directed by, adults with agendas or horrible parents. And it's really just them acting out their own fear, their own anger, because they subconsciously know. That's why it's very important that, like, around children, you shouldn't even yell. Like, that's like a rule I have. And I've broken it before under like extreme circumstances, but we do pretty good with it. No yelling. Like, even if it's just like, we're not even fighting, we're just kind of like yelling about politics, because we differ in politics a little bit. She likes Tulsi Gabbard, so I can tell I'm starting to rub off on her. I like Tulsi too. But that has nothing to do with this, okay? So it's just horrific, and I wanted to make sure I got the facts straight. And this isn't going away. And I would have reported the story anyways. But after seeing Trump's tweets, it sounds like maybe it was they were caught in the crossfire of two cartels. Because otherwise, how did this boy escape if it was just one cartel? Now, if it's two cartels on each mountain, each having high ground, because these guys know what they're doing. They have a lot of money, a lot of training, good weapons. They don't have to walk up to the car and light it on fire. They could light it on fire from the top of the mountain with some weapon. Um, so I could see it being that, and it's almost like a stalemate, and that kid was able to get his siblings out of there. And so, like I said, the Miller family was heading to all four of the Miller family. The mother, the 10-year-old daughter, 12-year-old son. I'm sorry, all five. And then the two 8-month-old twins, boy and girl. So two boys, two girls. And then you had the Langford family, and there was two adults with them. Now, one of the adults had the name. Her last name was Langford Johnson. So I think that's why it says several families, not the two families. I think that actually there was an extended family, and she was 29, whereas and her name was Christina Marie um, Langford Johnson, and she was 29, whereas the older one, who was 43, still very young, but 43, um, you know, she like her. I know that Trevor, the uh, the 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 12-year-old, I believe, um, was her son, and then I think the 2.5-year-old Ryder was her son too. And then, like I said, um, Devin ran for help, ran 14 miles. I still forget if it was 13 or 14 years old, how old he was. I'm thinking 13, but he might have been 14. He ran for help, got help while he was out there. Either she was the oldest or the least wounded because she was grazed. The bullet didn't actually go in, it just grazed her. But yet, she's 9. All right, a 9-year-old who just went through something that traumatic. And I would, when I was 9, I don't know if I would have came out from those brushes after experiencing that. And all the dead bodies, and your mother's dead. And I hate to paint the picture, but it's sad. Um, yeah, DJ Truth. Let's just say your name is fitting based on what you just said. Um, I'm gonna read some comments because so the last thing I would say is that based on his tweets, I guess it probably was two because that's the only way that they wouldn't come down and finish off any survivors. Um, as if there were two factions, so they kind of kept each other at bay and were more concentrated on each other. Um, and I mean, but why shoot the woman and children? And also, my other question, to be honest, and this is probably something I shouldn't say, but I say it for a different reason than some may take it, is where were the husbands? And did the husbands maybe have like a business and owe some money or something? It just seems just horrifically. Doesn't it just come off as like too much? It's just overkill. I mean, that's the perfect word. Overkill. It's overkill. I mean, yes, 9 died, but 8 more were wounded. Only one person out of 18 didn't get hit. That's crazy to me. 3 cars shot up, and one. Now, I'm not sure if it was one of the 3 that was shot up, which I think it may be. Although, you gotta think 18 people. It probably was 4 cars. So, and one of them was burned to a crisp, which, by the way, that's in the. I try to put both families in to honor them. Some are survivors, some aren't there. But in those pictures, you see a father. So I wonder where was the father? And I probably shouldn't say it, but this is YouTube and we do truth. And this is not truth. This is just like a thought. It's not even opinion. It's just a thought. Where was the dad? Because this seems like overkill. Did he owe money? Does he own a business and owe money? I don't know. I feel horrible saying that because you know, I mean, he very well could have. It could just be this random, crazy thing that happened, and these cartels, because of the how America has been getting tougher at the border. The Mexican president has been getting tougher on the cartel. They're losing money. We didn't just arrest El Chapo, but we went after, and there was a shootout going after his son. I mean, they're starting to feel pressure. So maybe they realize all these white people, they're thinking Americans. They were right, except they were dual citizenship, and they maybe try to take them out. But then Trump saying that it was two cartels shooting it out, and they got caught in the crossfire. It doesn't sound like that to me. Yet at the same time, I wonder not only how did Devin get away? The 13 or 14-year-old? How did he get away? And right before he got away, get his siblings far enough away from the carnage where where there's cars burning, dead mothers, and horrible scene. I don't even want to describe any more of it, but you get the picture, I think. And to take them, hide them in the bush, high brush and all this stuff on them so they can't be found, and then run 14 miles and actually get help. If I could meet Devin, I would salute. I would salute that young man. He saved their lives. Same thing with all of them are brave. Mackenzie, not knowing after 9 years old, going through that with a bullet wound. She was grazed. She had a wound, and she is under the brush. Is under the brush along with a 9-month old who's shot in the chest, a 4-year old who's shot in the back. I'm sorry that I keep like saying these things, but you know what? I kind of want this to really kind of hit your hearts because these cartels have already ruined a whole generation as far as where I'm from. A whole everyone I grew up with. If they didn't move, there was a group of them that moved to California when they turned 18. All those guys are doing great. But for the rest of our crew who stayed home, outside of the two that went in the Navy with me, they're all dead, in jail, or on their way to jail or death pretty soon. It's like every time I don't go on Facebook, so when I do go on Facebook, I just like go to the search and just put RIP and search amongst my friends, and I find out, what 10 people died in the last 3 months. I do it whenever I go on Facebook. That's how it is. A whole generation. And then the ones who are living, they're having problems. They lived this crappy life. A lot of girls sold themselves for years, and it's a whole. And then not only that, but now it affects the next generation. This was an attack on like the American way, at least where I'm from, and I know that goes for many, basically everywhere in this country. Like we have a heroin problem here. Um, but we don't have meth and stuff like that. We have heroin, fentanyl. Like, that's our big problem. Other parts of the country, like Arizona, and I don't know. Like I picture like the Southwest, like kind of like around there. Um, it's more like meth. It's just meth everywhere, and you can see it. If you guys ever watch Live PD, you can see it. Our country is devastated with drugs. Well, one could say, well, when weren't we? What about the 90s, the war on drugs, when they were actually the ones bringing the drugs in from Bolivia straight into Arkansas, where there was a governor by the name of William Clinton, who then, had the connections to disperse those drugs all across the United States. And they introduced crack cocaine into the inner cities and ruined the black generations. Now it's the white generations. Living in Boston, I do meet a black heroin addict like once in a great while, but it's a white addiction for the most part. Um, Nothing's ever exclusive, and there's always exceptions. And I'm not saying like, oh, it matters more because it's white. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying what happened in the '90s was horrible. I was too young to really understand, but looking back, I mean, now I understand what I was seeing when this odd behavior I would observe all the time. It was people either freebasing or smoking crack, which there's a difference. Freebase, it's like actual coke, whereas crack, a little more added to it. Um, Anyways, now we're talking about drugs, but that's what the cartels are all about. And they've been flooding our country and getting filthy rich doing it. And now they just slaughtered a bunch of women and children. Yeah. All right. But I just wanted to make one last point. I gotta go. But I just want to make one last point. The president said how Mexico can't handle these cartels. We all know that. That's obvious. I'm telling you guys right now, the United States military is going to be used against these cartels. And these cartels have money, these cartels are organized. We can obviously handle them, but, you know, this needs to be done right. This needs to be done right. This isn't one of those cute things where it's planned. No, this is something that happened and it requires a response. These were Americans. These were Americans trying to practice their God given right and their constitutional right to practice their religion. And that's what they were doing in Mexico. And it seems like the Langfords were a little bit more like permanent around that area. I mean, especially for that kid to run for 14 miles in the mountains and find his family's house, it tells me that they've lived there for a while. Whereas I'm not sure, but just from putting the pieces together, it seems like the Miller family of five that were all killed, including the twins and the mother, who was only 30, by the way. Um, and her oldest was 12, so she had her first, which is a boy, so she had her first boy when she was 18, which is somewhat, from what I understand, it's somewhat common in the Mormon religion. You have children younger than, let's say, the average person in American population, average woman in American population. But my only questions is like, did the fathers own a business and only want money? All I want to hear is no, and then I don't want to ask any more questions about that. I hate saying that, but it does sound like it might have just been a thing where they were in the middle. They saw that they're white. They've been getting all this pressure from their own government because of the pressure of the U.S. government, and they might have taken that and made an example of them, because that's basically what they do. They create fear by making examples of people and killing people in horrific ways, and then the whole village is scared shitless because, I mean, how scared would you be if people, basically like an army, comes into your town? They, no matter what you got for guns, they got you outgunned and outmanned, and they take the toughest SOB who won't back down, and I don't know, rip his tongue out and then his nail, do something slow right in town square. And your police are actually part of it. All right, like the police over in Mexico work with the cartel. The only ones who are really fighting against them are the federales. And so the federales, they have to come in. and it takes a lot for them to have to come in. And there's been a lot, but lately with the pressure on the from the U.S., which is good, they have been putting pressure on these cartels. Now, the only drawback of that is when you back them into a corner, sometimes something crazy happens. They'll do something. It's not out of character, but they'll do something that maybe if this wasn't all going on, they weren't under so much pressure from their government because of the pressure from our government, they wouldn't have shot up and burned those cars. That's all I'm saying. But am I saying that we shouldn't be putting on pressure on them? No, we should be. And the Mexicans should be putting pressure on the cartels. Like I said, look at what happened to the whole generation of Americans. And then not just that, a lot of that generation had children or are still alive and have children. But they are messed up and they're going to live off the government, and those children aren't going to have a chance. So it's going to affect even more the next generation who don't have their parents. It's not just men, it's girls addicted. There's more babies addicted to drugs than ever. We have the highest infant mortality rate in the world. I don't know if that's an exact fact, but I know that it's like ridiculously high compared to other countries. But to say in the world is strong when you have places like certain countries in Africa or in the Middle East, it's kind of hard to say in the world. But amongst developed nations, we have the highest mortality rate for infants during birth. A lot of that is drugs. Most of that is drugs. Also, we are a country that we believe in working. We spend most of our days working in one fashion or another. So when you do that and you have a career, well, a lot of times people, especially nowadays, they don't actually start having children. They have the career first and then the children. Like my mother had the children first and then the career. My father had we kind of just did it all. He had the children as far as me and my. I'm not even getting into that. It's personal. But my father was an extremely great man. If you guys ever heard of Winter Hill, yeah. Um, so my point is, I think. My point was to first of all report this accurately, and I believe I did so. And also, I just want to say that I strongly believe military action is going to be taken. And I hope we take out as many of those motherfuckers as we can. And with that, red pill, new dispensary.